G'day guys, how you going? Hope you're all having a fantastic evening. Tonight I'm going to be doing something a little bit different. Yes, they are going to be reviews, but this is going to be another original versus remake video. So I've done a few of these and they seem to be fairly popular, so I thought I would do another one today. So I was always going to do an original versus remake of this particular film, but obviously I couldn't because here in Australia it wasn't released in cinemas until today. So after seeing it, I thought I would rehash my memory of the original by watching it afterwards, and that's exactly what I've done. So I watched this film a long time ago, the original, but because I'd forgotten a little bit about it, to give it every possible chance and give this video a little bit of credibility, I thought I would do another, I'll have another look at it. So anyway, this movie, the original was released in 1981. English language, directed by Sam Raimi, and the remake was released in 2013, directed by Fede Alvarez, and this film is called The Evil Dead. Now, basically, as is the case with a lot of remakes, it follows the same story, but there's just a few tiny little different things to make them a little bit, separate from each other. So the original, you've got a group of friends who come to this cabin. They come across the Necronomicon, that is the Book of the Dead. So they press play on this cassette player, and this voice recites a verse that ultimately wakes up evil spirits, and it possesses the people inside this cabin, and so their night has gone from bad to worse. So then the remake, it's a little bit different. The group of friends are going to this cabin not for a holiday or not to basically have a bit of fun, but they're there to help out a friend. Now, this friend's a drug addict. She almost died. She's had many overdoses, and the friends see this as the last opportunity for her in order to get better. So they take her to the cabin, and they're going to make her go cold turkey. So basically, she's going to stop the drug, and it's going to have serious withdrawals, but they feel that this is the perfect environment. They're going to be supporting her, and they're not going to let her leave. So this is the last chance to save her life. But the same thing sort of happens. They come across the Necronomicon in different sort of circumstances, and one of the friends, he reads out the verses inside the book, and the same thing happens. It unleashes the evil spirits and it possesses them. So their night has just gone from bad to worse. So what happens from that point on in both of the films, it's something you're going to have to find out for yourself, because that's as far as I'm going with my rundowns. Now, my thoughts on these films. Now, The Evil Dead is regarded as a very much loved classic. A lot of people love this film. So if you don't like what I have to say about these movies, each to their own. I'm entitled to an opinion, and I'm not saying you're an idiot if you liked it, basically. If you disagree with me, it's your right. Feel free to leave comments, but make sure they're constructive comments. So anyway, the original, I thought for its time, was very nasty, and the gore effects were actually done very well. Even by today's standards, you would see films that are regarded as gore films that are not as good as the original. I thought while the original, the effects were, a little bit dated, a little bit shoddy, they were practical. Now, obviously, CGI wasn't back in the 1980s, but that was, these 1980 films and the films that have come before CGI, it's a blessing in disguise, really. The lack of budget really works in their favour, because I feel that practical effects look so much better than computer-generated effects. I just feel that it has a lot more charm to it, and that's what part of the charm is to the original. So a lot of the practical effects, and for the most part, they're done very well. Even the dodgy effects were still good, in my opinion, because it just gives the movie charm. And charm is something that is missing in a lot of these modern horror films. So that's something I really appreciated about the film. Back in the day, it was a lot harder these days to shock an audience. Back in the day, it was a lot easier. So that's why, naturally, the films of the past are a lot tamer. But this one wasn't tame. I felt that it was quite nasty in the actual bloodletting, and a lot of gorehounds are going to really like that. So as far as violence is concerned, the original really does deliver quite a heavy punch, and that's something I really appreciated. So the practical effects, Sam Raimi did a great job in this film. Bruce Campbell is another massive plus to the film. I thought his character was very sympathetic. He wasn't an exaggerated sort of hero. He was kind of a reluctant hero, and you really sympathise for him. You want to see him get out of it, although, there's no character development. He just had a presence about him where you wanted him to get through it, and you feel sorry for him, but at the same time you feel that he's been through hell, and he's a genuine sort of hero without wanting to be. So that was a different kind of hero. He didn't have superhuman powers. He was just an everyday guy put into a very extraordinary circumstance. So I really like Bruce Campbell's character. I thought he stood out, and he was a genuine hero of the film. The atmosphere very dark, but ultimately there is a problem with the atmosphere that I'll go through a little bit later. But genuine, it is a horror film and it feels like a horror film. And Sam Raimi really knows what he's doing as far as this genre is concerned. Now, my problem with the movie is the fact that it had a humorous element to it. Now, I don't think it's supposed to be a horror comedy. But I really hope it was, because it had a very light-hearted sort of undertone to the film. Some of the effects, not the effects, the makeup was really funny in some parts. The soundtrack, I mean, not the soundtrack, but the audio, the laughing was really, really funny. And the evil spirits at the start talking through the cabin into the unfortunate victim, I thought was unintentionally hilarious. I thought very, very cheesy, and it was very stupid as far as I was concerned. So there is this underlying feeling that there is a humorous element to the film, and it kind of lightens the mood a little bit. So although it's a nasty sort of film, it should have been made a hell of a lot nastier than it was. I think Sam Raimi could have left out that sort of comedy approach, and it would have been a genuine horror feeling. But because there is this unintentional, funny sort of atmosphere to the film, it lightens the mood and ultimately makes it a popcorn flick as far as I'm concerned. Now, a few people might disagree with me, but as far as I'm concerned, as far as my opinion is concerned, I feel that there were some moments that were funny. And I don't know if it was intentional, but if it was, I think it was the wrong move. And if it wasn't intentional, I think it was, it's not quite. Sam Raimi might not be as good as I first thought he was if he's putting these unintentional funny moments into there. So, that's ultimately what lets the film down. Apart from that, very good pacing, and I thought the ending was very satisfying. So, all in all, the original, a very good film. It stands the test of time, but as I said, that the atmosphere of horror versus that light-hearted approach, I thought gave it a popcorn feeling. So that was the biggest criticism of it. Then we go to the remake. Now, the remake, what I loved about the remake was the fact that it pays homage to the classic, it respects the classic, but it makes it its own. It has a little bit of tinkering to it that makes it, avoids it from being a scene-for-scene rip-off. And that's something so easy to do, and it shows that the director, Fede Alvarez, has a bit of balls, because it's a much-loved classic. A lot of fans, surround this film, and they love it. And it would have been easy for Fede Alvarez to copy the film and just make it, more modern, I guess you could say. But the fact that he tries to do his own thing shows that he pays respect to the classics, but he also pays respect to the audience. He wants the audience to experience something that they've experienced before, but at the same time experience something a little bit new. So he's tinkered with the story a little bit. I felt that the story worked a lot better. I liked the fact that one of these friends was an addict and they were going to the cabin in order to go cold turkey. I thought that was a lot more credible, and I liked the way that the curse came about. I thought it was a lot more plausible than it was in the original. I thought the original, the way it comes in, the demons talking in the air, I thought was very comical. Yes, there is that element in the remake, but it's not as present as it is in the original. So I thought the remake was a lot nastier. It didn't have that funny sort of aspect to it, but it was over the top. And ultimately, once again, that is what brings it to a popcorn status, in that the gore was very, very overused. And it really comes to the point where you can't take it that seriously. But having said that, I thought the gore was very, very well done. And once again, it avoids CGI and it goes the practical route. And that's why I feel it's a step above a lot of modern horror sort of remakes and all kinds of other splatter films. I thought the gore was done very well in the remake. Now, where the remake lacks is their main character. There's no Bruce Campbell, so I thought that was always going to be a negative, and ultimately it is. But it doesn't take anything away from it, because while the remake has its negatives and positives, I thought that the positives, like the original, the positives make up for the negatives. Now, the remake, I kind of feel it goes on for a little bit too long. It lags a little bit towards the end. It kind of could have cut itself off about 10 or 15 minutes earlier. I thought towards the end it was a little bit unnecessary, and it kind of slowed down the pace of the film. I felt that the pacing of the original was much better, but the remake doesn't go on for too long, so you won't have to contend with too much unnecessary cinema. So all in all, I thought the lack of lightheartedness to the remake was what made the remake a little bit darker, and but as I said, because it's so over the top as far as gore is concerned, it still gives it the popcorn approach, and that's ultimately what the Evil Dead's all about, popcorn. And so, yeah, I mean, the remake, it has its positives, but the negatives were, it doesn't have the feel of the original because of the fact there is no Bruce Campbell. He is a legend, and this is the film that made him a legend as far as I'm concerned. So, yeah, that is a problem that a lot of remakes have when they're copying, remaking a classic, is that the main character, it happened in Straw Dogs with Dustin Hoffman, that when the remake comes about, the person playing the central role isn't quite as good, so it kind of loses effect a little bit. But as I said, there is enough new element to the film of the remake to make it worth watching on its own. So you could probably watch the remake on its own and still judge it for what it is, because the original, although it does pay homage to the remake, they are two different sort of films. So that's something I really, really liked. So both films overall, I felt that the original was a little bit overrated, but having said that, it's still a very good film. The remake is very good. It is a little bit over the top as far as violence is concerned. I feel that violence took the spotlight in the remake, sorry, and I thought that it could have been a little bit scarier in parts. But having said that, both films have their problems, have their positives, and ultimately they are very good, but if not, just a little bit overhyped. So my verdict, which film I would pick, it's a very tough call, but in the end, I'm going to go with the remake, just for the simple fact that I thought it was a modernized version of it. I thought that the problems that the original had as budget constraints is fixed in the remake, and I felt that the overall mood to the remake was just a little bit more intense than the original. But as I said, both have their positives, both outdo each other in certain elements, but overall the remake for me is the winner. So let me know what you guys think, if you've seen the remake, and whether or not you agree with me, it's up to you, but please give your criticisms or your agreements in a constructive manner. Alright guys, this video has been a little bit long, but I hope you've enjoyed it. So until next time, keep watching movies, and I'll see you later.